Dr. Jazz.
I played a lot with Hollenbeck, so like I told you, and he told me some stories and anecdotes when you guys drove from gigs and stuff like that. But I just want to start first with this land. And that's a good. But like, how did this the last one, this land, happen, and the idea to cooperate with the Westerlies? You know, it's quite an unusual record again. So
yeah. So the Westerlies approached me to do a one song collaboration for a record that they intended to do with different singers. So I sent them a whole bunch of suggestions for a song, and they chose Another Holiday. And when we started working on the arrangement together, we really collaborated on the arrangement. Like, Riley brought in this arrangement, and then I sort of threw everybody off with my suggestions, as I usually do. And then we came up with this arrangement, and then we sort of sat down. This was just after Trump had been elected, and we were like, God, what can we do? This is, you can't just sit there and think, yeah, your music is going to help somebody very indirectly by. So we were like, you know what? Can we make a protest record without it being, a protest record? Like, be something really seductive and very beautiful and very tender and very warm. And so we decided that we would do that, and we got a residency at Yellow Barn, which is in Vermont. It's an artist residency, classical residency. And so we spent 10 days working on this program and putting it together, writing and arranging.
Oh, like together, everyone, and
yeah.
Oh wow, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, staying in one house and sharing oatmeal and all that stuff.
Oh wow, that's so beautiful. That's like in the old days almost. Sounds like it. Yeah. It's
nice. Otherwise, you don't get anything done, especially in New York.
Yeah, sure.
It was lovely.
How did you choose the repertoire? Like, I mean, Woody Guthrie kind of makes sense, but like, let's say Joni Mitchell and.
Yeah, so I had recorded the Joni Mitchell piece a cappella, just by myself for my solo record, and that sort of felt like a right opening. Like, we start from where we are, and then we go to places that we haven't been. And so we started writing material. We started collecting different source material. And we quickly realized that, with a protest record, you can't cover every ethnicity or every protest movement in the world. That would be 50,000 records. There's just too much. So we try to be as inclusive as we possibly could within, the material that we had, while writing, our own stuff and then taking other source material. I took a found piece, looked for the Union label and arranged it. I wanted to have something that was really commercial. It's almost cheesy and almost just off the opposite end of the spectrum, like not arty, not artful, but something very commercial, which this song was, and still be of, speaking to the labor movement and speaking to uniting against, unfair labor practices and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I found this song and then arranged it after hearing the Westerlies do a quartet concert the night before. I was like, oh, I heard things I hadn't even considered in arrangement, and that was very, very helpful, actually. So we put that together.
Yeah. Are you planning to gig like with this group? I mean, did you already do gigs and stuff, or?
We started. The record came out during the pandemic.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
we had sort of held off releasing it during the pandemic, thinking we're going to do it after the pandemic. But we basically released it in the fall of 2020, and then now we have a gig at Joe's Pub on April 18th.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
And then we have other sort of dates in the book. Not a lot. it's sort of it's hard to get the momentum back up for a record that is, that was supposed to be out the beginning of 2020, sort of the spring or summer of 2020, and then delayed. Anyway, here we are.
yeah. No, but you mentioned another holiday, and I wanted to ask, I kind of first, of course, being a guitarist, stumbled upon your music through band Monder, kind of, I was like, okay, who's this guy? And then, how it is then. I start digging your music and getting your records and listening to your music. And I wanted to ask you about your composing ideas. And, I listen to Elegy a lot, let's say your last one, and the Monder stuff and everything. It's like you have this beautiful melodies, yet there is always something lurking behind. I don't know, how should I put it? It's like a haunting beauty, or it's like a movie soundtrack sometimes to me. It's like a movie. And how do you process when you compose? What's your idea? Because your tunes are sometimes really long also, or they're short snippets, but like especially the long ideas, like what's your process there?
My process is to sit with the first idea for as long as I can, because I think there's something in the first idea that's really, really pertinent and very true, and to record it right away and to have it be for me to come back to it in its initial idea. So if I write something that's very, very simple, like look, my headphones just disconnected. If I write something very, very simple, what's happening here? My headphones are weird. Oh, there. Like something like that. I try to tape it because a lot of times the phrasing, the octave, the tempo, the timing of everything might make the difference. Because once I start to write very simple ideas down, they die very quickly. So if I write this down, it's already losing its magic just by repeating it and by writing it down. And so I try to stay with the first idea in that I tape it, I capture it, and then I try to write variations as much as I can, so I don't get stuck hammering out the same thing over and over again. That's sort of my process. And then for longer forms, that's where it comes in handy, where I have variations and sort of ideas handy that I could work with. And sometimes, as everyone that's writing music knows, sometimes a song comes out and you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just construction, and it's like, what should I do here and what should I do there? So it's different for each piece. Another Holiday just came out. Like it just came out fully formed. Okay. Yeah, and luckily I didn't get in the way to make it more complicated or more complex or write, key changes or meter changes. I just left it as it is. And for me, the sort of, I know this sounds a little weird, but when I'm moved by something, not because I wrote it, but because it is true, there's a certain feeling in me that gets like, I get this like, oh my God, this is right. It's a very strange
I know what you mean.
Feeling. Yeah, almost like I'm moved by it or something, but not because I did it, but because it's true. I'm working on a solo clarinet piece as a commission right now.
Really?
The same thing
wow.
happened.
Beautiful.
The same thing happened yesterday when I was writing it. I was like, "This is it," And I was fiddling around with tonalities and stuff like that, and suddenly I was like, "Oh, that's it." And then when I put it together and I did it through the different channels, like, oh my God, this is actually quite touching. It's quite beautiful in a way that's not self-serving, not like, oh, I did that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like looking at something outside of you and saying, oh my God, I was able to capture that.
Yeah, that's so important. Well, where does the complexity,
Well, I try not to
come into the play, yeah.
I try not to be, my tendency is to be very complex, actually, but I try to always err on the side of simplicity right now. That's where I'm right now. But my personality gets in the way. I mean, it just is. If the complexity serves the beauty and the propulsion of the melody or whatever, then I'm all for it. Otherwise, I'm not into it. Complexity for complexity's sake is not where I am right now.
Yeah. But how
I mean, Ben is a very good example because it's a very good because we're in the middle of recording another record of his, and I'm deeply involved in a lot of pieces, and some of the pieces are so complex. Good. However, when I was listening to it in the rehearsal or recording, like practicing for the record, I was so moved I could barely keep it together. And it was like I understood, like, yeah, it's super complex, and the rhythms are hard, and the intervals are really, hard, but it is it's so heartfelt. I couldn't get over it. I was just like choked up with emotion. Yet it was the highly, highly complicated music. It's not, diatonic by any means.
Oh no, yeah. So, but the melodies are so beautiful always.
Yeah, no, he has he has an incredible sense of melody and form and harmony. But it's particularly struck me in this process because usually you do it as best as you can, and then you hear it back and you're like, oh, this is actually quite pretty. Meanwhile, you're struggling, doing everything.
Yeah. But how do you cope with band stuff? When he I transcribed a lot of his stuff, and I bought his, the songbooks of the collection of his compositions and studied that a lot, actually. And, then there are tunes which are like 21 pages with constant shifting meters and tonalities and ranges and everything. Like, how do you deal with these when you get a lead sheet for this, or to cope with the odd meters that he writes? And
I avoid it. I don't look at it for as long as I possibly can. Then I call Ben and gripe about it. And then I begrudgingly learn it, and then I love it. It's a very painful process. The first 3 steps are really, really awful. And then there's a big reward at the end, and I never know it's there, but it's always there. But it's just like, oh no, not another one, not one of those. No, don't do this to me. Why? Why do I have to learn all these notes? Oh, it hurts. It's so hard. Stop it.
No, it sounds so simple when you listen to the tune, like.
I know.
It's like, man, you're singing like these long lines, let's say, over. And
Tra-la-la, I know.
Yeah, and it's like the meter is like, I don't know, 17, 16, and you're actually singing in, I don't know, half notes or something over it, and it's just like, man. Sometimes I wonder how you guys do that. It's just like
counting. But also, this is where the idea of trust and time comes in. Like, I've worked with Ben for such a long time, so I know that when I don't do this for anybody else, really. Sure. Like putting in this much time and creative muscle for something, that's very, very specific and very difficult to execute. That's because I love his music. I love Ben. We have a history together. So I trust that at the end, it's not going to be just some random notes thrown at the page. And I've done so much of that music, especially in my 30s, where composers invite me to, sing their premiere. And that's the only time you ever sing it is the premiere. And it's the last time you'll ever see that piece. And it's super hard. And you just spend months learning this. No. N-O spells no.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But Theo, I wanted to ask is, we mentioned Joni Mitchell, and you've done Kate Bush, and you've done so many other people. But who were, let's say, I don't know, early '80s, I guess, or people who got you really inspired for what you're doing now? Like, which vocalists, or not necessarily vocalists, but like improvisers? Which albums blew your mind in the beginning that you heard them?
Well, one of the early albums that really changed my outlook was Al Jarreau's "Look to the Rainbow," the double album.
Oh, wow.
I think Al Jarreau has not been credited enough for setting free, the voice, and even before I heard Bobby McFerrin's The Voice, which I transcribed certainly, and practiced and tried to emulate in some ways, but I think there was a certain fluidity and a certain sense of lyricism in Al Jarreau's singing that I had never. That was just incredible. I mean, there was a freedom that was just fresh and incredible. I don't know. It just took me. And then I was really into Norma Winston, especially the earlier stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Azimuth records are just incredible. So those are probably my earlier influences, and then a lot of instrumental records. And then a lot of free jazz kind of stuff. It was very messy. I sort of worked my way backwards from avant-garde and free jazz to more melodic kind of material.
Oh, really?
More melodic singing. Yeah.
Interesting.
So when I came to New York, I worked mostly in very, very tricky music and avant-garde. I was in a band with Mark Dresser and Dave Douglas.
Forest Green. I love that stuff.
Yeah, and that music was so hard. It was probably harder than some of Ben's music at the time. Lots of metric modulations and non-doubled, atonal, leapy stuff that's just like, oh my god. And so I was sort of into the harder the music, the better. There definitely can't be any words. There can't be any consonances. God forbid it should be in 4/4. Exactly. So that's sort of where I started, and then found my way back home.
Yeah. I noticed that, like, the earlier stuff with Ben, like no vote, and I mean with Ben it's different, but then Elegy, like we mentioned, it's still complex, but yet it's different. Of course, it's the ECM connection. I mean, I want to ask you about that, of course. But you mentioned coming to New York. Like, I think you moved to New York in the late 80s, right?
Yeah, in 89. Mm-hmm.
And how was that like for you, as a male vocalist entering the scene? Like, who were your first connections and people you actually met or gave you the chance, let's say?
So the first connection was through Sheila. Was through Sheila Jordan, who was who I met at a workshop in Graz, Austria.
Oh, really?
We became we became fast friends, and she became my mentor. And she said, "Why don't you come to America?" I had already applied to Berklee School of Music. I had gotten a scholarship, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to just go there and look at the school. The only thing at the time that was really sort of known was Berklee. Nobody knew anything else. Berklee was where you go to study jazz in America. So I'd gotten a scholarship. Sheila offered for me to stay at her apartment when I come to New York. So that was very helpful. So I had a place to go and a person to guide me. Because at that time, there was no internet. You didn't know. You was just like, I'm going to America. It's very scary. So I stayed at Sheila's house, and then I took a bus to Boston, and I looked at Berklee and at Boston. I was like, I don't want to be in Boston. No way. As soon as I hit New York, I was like, I want to stay in New York. I want to live in New York. So before I left from my first visit, Sheila called Manhattan School of Music and got me a scholarship there. And that was fantastic. So I immediately started there, and then transferred over to City College after a year at Manhattan School, because the program at City College was a little better at the time. And also Sheila was teaching there, and I wanted to be with her. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got to New York. And it was a very different scene, and it was much more reliant on jam sessions and meeting people, not so much as projecting your image out onto social media, which didn't exist, but getting a gig by carrying a cassette to some club and then pestering the club owner for weeks to come to give you one, little slot somewhere.
It's incredible. Yeah.
I don't think it's different from today in many ways, but anyway, it was a smaller maybe scene, it seemed, because you didn't know what everybody around the world was doing at all times,
Yeah.
So it felt contained, it felt collegiate, it felt like, oh, we are all in the same boat here.
Yeah.
And the first connection I got was through Sheila, and that was with a composer named Kirk Nurok, who was a composer who had studied at Juilliard, had conducted Hair on Broadway, and had recorded for Virgo Records, a German contemporary music label. So he was a jazz piano player who had, played with many of the greats. So he had his fingers in every pie that I wanted to eat, and it was great because he was teaching me a lot of things. I learned a lot about composition and structure and form from him, more than in school in my composition class, and orchestration as well. So we made 2 records, and in the process of that, he wrote a lot of music for me and with me in mind. We spent hours and hours, working on this material and on the structures of the key relationships between pieces. It was really a great school and really fun. So that was my first connection. And through Kirk, I met some musicians. And in New York, if you're halfway decent at the time, it's a small scene. People are like, oh yeah, Theo can, he could do that. So I was sort of quickly passed around. But the way I met Ben was that I got a gig in 93 or 94 at Cornelia Street Cafe, a regular gig. And I had heard Ben Monder in Pat Zimmerle's band.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I was just like, who is this guy? This guy has the sound that I want to be in, be surrounded with. And I'd called Ben and I left a message on his answering machine, and he never called back. And then I had called another guitar player because I wanted to have a guitar voice duo. And the other guitar player couldn't do it. And then Ben called me back. He said, he was out of town and he didn't get my message and he would love to do it. And we got together and it was an immediate sense of, oh yeah, there's a connection. It's great. And so we had this regular gig. We started to develop our repertoire, and then we took it from there. And it was at Ben's house that John Hollenbeck, who was his roommate at the time,
okay. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. John told me.
Yeah, so John was like, he knocked on the door. He's like, hello, hey, how are you? Who is this person? It was nice. And then John and I started to work together in duo and in quartets and trios and all kinds of formations to this day, including Ben was in several of those.
Yeah. No, I love, especially your duo with Ben. It's like, it's so out of this world. It's, when you listen to vocal guitar duos, it gets so boring, really. It's a terrible cliche, like can be, I'll put it like that. But what you guys make, it's just like, really,
Yeah.
And
it's fun.
You and with the effects also that you start using, like how did your story with that begin, like with sampling and overdubbing and
I think it was Jay Clayton, who was briefly sort of a teacher and workshop leader that I visited. Jay Clayton was is one of the pioneers of using electronics on your voice, and she said that they're making a looper now called Jam Man or something. So I ran over to Sam Ash, the store in Midtown, and I just bought it. I think it was in 94 also. 94 was an eventful year in my memory. So I bought this looper, and it had 30 seconds of memory without any extra upgrade, which today you have like 10 hours on
sure.
given pedal. But so you had to buy an upgrade if you wanted more than 30 seconds. But the 30 seconds was actually a very good exercise because I started to, for the first 2 years, I think I didn't use it on stage at all. I just wrote pieces on the looper, vocal pieces, and I notated them, trying to figure out what kind of rhythmic and harmonic relationship can sustain endless repeats. Because to me, the worst thing about the looping thing is that it loops. Like, to me, that's the weakest part, that it keeps repeating everything mechanically. And however clever you can be about it, it always has a sense of, okay, boom, ding, you know, this whole thing just gets very tired very quickly. So I was trying to figure out how long can something sustain, you know, even when it's mechanical. And so I wrote a lot of short little etudes, which I want to publish at some point because they're kind of nice to learn the instrument of looping, learn, you know, how to loop. Some of them are highly atonal, highly complex, highly clustered. Some of them are very simple melodies over a shifting chord change progression, that kind of stuff. So I learned the instrument before I took it out on the road, and then I sort of started to develop ideas around working with another person, because the problem with looping is you also need a setup and you need quiet space if you want to be very nerdy about it. But I didn't want to. Ultimately, I don't want my looping to replace another instrument. That to me is very uninteresting, actually. So now I'm going to do the bass line. That's really a placeholder for somebody that should be there that isn't there. And I don't want that to be, for me, the looping should be, or the electronics should be its own thing. Like, it should be something that only exists in this realm and cannot be played by anybody else but the voice and these electronic gadgets that I have. So
I agree. You seem you seem to have mastered it. Like Hollenbeck told me this, like that you guys played duos in the in the beginnings, and then you looped something and it turned out to be like, I don't know, a 19 something, and while it was supposed to be a 4/4, and then he was like, yeah man, this sounds so cool that you guys were driving back and analyze it and everything.
Yeah, I did a whole slew of gigs in duo with John, which was so fun. I mean, we could just play anything all day long and it would sound good to me. But in the aftermath of each of these gigs, there were usually galleries and smaller venues and alternative spaces. We would analyze our gigs, which was a great thing to do, and I recommend this to all my students. When you're free improvising, to listen back so you actually hear what you did, because in the moment you often do things you have no idea what they sound like really, because you're so busy doing them. And so to hear the whole later in the car, it was often that we had the opposite reaction to our gig. The gig would end, I was like, this was the best gig we've ever done, and I don't think we could ever have a better gig, and this was the best I've ever sung in my entire life, and I might as well retire, was my feeling. And John was like, I didn't like it. I was like, what? Then we drive back from the gig and we listen to the cassette or whatever was what we had, and John was like, you know what, that wasn't so bad. Oh, I actually like this. And I was like, ugh, this is out of tune and it doesn't even work, and I don't know what I was singing there. Ugh. So oftentimes it shifted from the initial enthusiasm to more like critical listening. That was interesting. I didn't think that could be possible. Like, I thought that once you think you were great. Nope, you were not. Yeah. A lot of times you think you're so good, but you're actually kind of not that good.
No, but it's true what you're saying. To listening back to gigs, it's like, yeah, that's a really good exercise to see, like, what you played or what you sang was too long.
Yeah, and also to talk to your collaborator while you're listening. Yeah, exactly. To say, so oftentimes John would say, I wish you had done that longer. You know, and I was like, really? And the same for me. It was like, I love this zone. It's like, ugh, no. So the takeaway oftentimes was we were moving too fast. There were too many ideas going through too fast, too much, like, you know, going instead of letting things happen more and more. And so that became part of our aesthetic also, is to understand that letting things sit and letting things happen very, very organically and very slowly is more successful, you know, musically, to us, for us.
No, but I agree. Not being afraid to stay in one zone. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I think we're all the same. That you're afraid that it's boring or something, but if you just let it go, then I guess that's the right choice, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still do that, to listen to gigs? I mean, do you still in your bands, or like, are people willing to do that actually, or no?
Well, I haven't had a real gig in a long time,
Okay.
except for those few. Yeah, but no, not. I mean, I haven't had any gigs where that was even on the table, because you know, there weren't any free improvisatory gigs. And then for the most part, you kind of assess what went well and what didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, the last gig I did was with Shai Maestro and Duo in Italy last year in the summer.
Oh wow. Beautiful.
That was sort of it felt like a real gig. But other than that,
Yeah.
it's just starting up again.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll.
Yeah.
I have a tour confirmed for October, and let's see if it happens. I think looks good so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
But you mentioned Shai, and you know, we talked about John and Chris Tordini is like the last member of the crew of Elegy, which I mentioned before. And how did this record come about for you? And you know, you mentioned Norma Winstow. She's like, you know, the vocalist for ECM as well, like in the 80s with Kenny and all that stuff with John Taylor. And how was it for you, like, when ECM approached you? Or I don't know, actually, how did this record happen with Manfred's collaboration? And
I had done 2 records with ECM with Meredith Monk in the 90s, or early 2000s and late 90s or something. And then I did a collaboration with Julia Hiltzmann, the piano player, of Kurt Weill songs. And that record
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful record, I think. And Manfred and I sort of got a sense of how we would work together, and it was very, very positive. And so I had, you know, reached out to him and said, yeah, I'd love to make a record with you. And then it just happened, you know, it happened a year later. I had a date. I mean, it's very, very, and Norma says that too. It's very, very, it takes a long time to get a date because Manfred's very busy, and there's a lot of CDs coming out at all times, and there's only so many hours in the day. So we had a date, and Shai was actually came into my life because he had emailed me. This stranger came to New York, I think it was 2015 or 14, had emailed me and said, "My name is Shai Maestro, and I would like to jam with you."
Oh, wow, and that's so cool.
Like, you know, I'm like, who is this person? And I don't jam. Like, what does even mean jam? Like, ugh, jam. That's so ugh. Like, play through the real book? Okay.
Yeah, let's do all the things you are, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, not sure. And then I clicked on the video link. I was like, we're going to jam. Oh, yeah, we're going to jam. So we got together, we jammed. It was fabulous. And then I got us some gigs. Some duo gigs. We played in duo, and then when this record came about, it's like, you should be on this. This is how Shai met Manfred.
Yeah, oh, wow.
And that's how they continued to work together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How was it like working with Manfred for you? Like,
easy, wonderful, great. I have no complaints. I mean, it's nerve-wracking because it's Manfred Eicher, and it's all the things that you know put onto it. But ultimately, I want to work with Manfred because I really enjoy his input. I enjoy his aesthetic. I want there to be somebody who says yes, no, maybe.
Yeah.
Or try this, try that. Otherwise, I could do it myself. You know, And I've always said that if I want to work with a producer, I want the producer to be present and have their fingers on it, not just sit there and nod. Like, what use is that?
Yeah, exactly.
So I really enjoy Manfred's hands-on approach. We work very smoothly together, or worked so far, and it was wonderful. It was great.
Yeah, it's beautiful that he also shifted a little, you know, like the aesthetic of the label is still there, of course, the sound, but music-wise, you know, the Tim Byrne records and the Craig Taborn and Mike Formanex, and, you know, it's nice to see that he kind of went also this other way. It's not only this kind of Pat Metheny, new Chautauqua, whatever, American garage vibe, or, you know, Eberhard Weiberisch, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, he's growing and he's changing, and he's well aware of, you know, all the stuff that's going on. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah, he's one of the best. One of the most influential labels. I mean,
and consistently influential.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you. You know, we mentioned the Elegy, and how do you see yourself growing through time as a band leader, or, you know, if you remember those first early band leading experiences, and if you step outside yourself and look at yourself now as a band leader, like, how have you progressed, or are you planning to also?
Well, I'm more confident in the simplicity, or in the things that I actually want, that people, especially in the jazz realm, are a little bit sort of unsure, or go to the jazz default, let's say, in the playing or in the execution of it. And so I'm more confident in leaning or leading another person into what I want, rather than succumbing to what they offer. So, you know, I might say, like, please, you know, only play triads here, and then when you improvise, just keep it very, very, just play, you know, in two keys, like have this one, whatever. Like, be more specific, more hands-on, without, you know, putting somebody in a straitjacket, I would say. But being more confident about the fact that I have something very specific and that not everybody likes, and that's quite niche as far as, you know, the music is concerned, and then really leaning into that a little bit more, rather than going the other way and leaning more into the, you know, making it more jazz or whatever. But not interested in that anymore.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Anish, you know, I think when I listen to your music and composition, not only singing, it's like you created your own world. It's like John, you know, all these guys that you collaborate with, Monder and Hollenbeck and all these guys. And but I wanted to ask you here, like, what's your view? I mean, I see you as a composer and as an instrumentalist. Of course, vocal is what you do, but, like, your view on the male jazz vocals, or why is it where it is in a way, or?
Well, right now there's so many phases. Like, if you live it long enough, you see all these trends and all these fashions go through music, even jazz. I always thought, jazz is such high art that it doesn't go through any trends, but that's completely wrong.
Sure.
We had a trend where the female singing was very, very light and very, very almost bodiless. And this is not a judgment as far as the quality of the music. It's just, I'm observing from the outside, especially as a teacher, that a lot of female students sing very light, la da 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 da, and the male students have to be hyper masculine. So there was this extreme, the extreme edges of how you sing. The girls, the women were girls, the men wanted to be, you know, even more masculine. Now what's happening is, and this is also very interesting, and I don't even know how to categorize this, that for each well-known jazz singer there is a historical reference. Like, you could say that this person harkens back to Betty Carter. This person's person. It's not that they're stealing stuff, but it's that sort of idea of, here's my main influence. I'm not saying that's bad. I actually think that we're reliving a little bit of a renaissance of jazz singing in its full vocal you know, what the voice can do in jazz. But is it going forward? I don't know. It's not up for me to say.
Yeah, sure.
So it's interesting. I like what's happening right now. I mean, Cecile is a very good friend of mine, and I think that she has done really incredible stuff, and she's a real artist, and she is using her voice to the fullest with every shade and every color. It's not a monochromatic thing whatsoever. So I'm so grateful for that. You know, I'm grateful that that is part of the vocabulary again, to, you know, for women to be strong, like vocally. And for men, I don't know that many male jazz singers. I mean, Michael Mayo is amazing. He's, you know, an incredible improviser. Also a good friend of mine. And there's a lot of skill. There's a lot of skill right now. Where people are extremely skilled. I mean, Becca Stevens is great.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. So there's a lot of just like mind-blowing skill right now.
Yeah, I like that there are, you know, like Becca, that all these people are also amazing songwriters.
Yeah, and Michael too, yeah.
And composers, and I think that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, many times jazz singers were like just reinterpreting standards or whatever songs, and now all these guys are just like, you know, writing amazing music, and it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, if you're Ella Fitzgerald, you don't need to write music. You're writing it when you're singing.
Yeah. Wow, that's a different story. Yeah. Cool. But yeah, Tia, I just wanted to ask you also, like, what are your plans for the future, and are you writing some new stuff? Or, I mean, you mentioned the new project with Ben, which I'm immensely looking forward to, by the way.
Yeah.
You made my day now. So, send Ben an email. Well, where is it?
Yes. Yeah, I'm waiting for a date from Manfred. He's okay to do a record with Shai, Maestro. I'm just waiting for a date, you know.
Fantastic.
I'm on the waiting list here. So that's happening. I'm still writing more pieces for that record. The record is fully done, basically. I have all the material plus a lot. What I'm working on right now is learning a lot of music. I'm doing a contemporary music tour. This is with a string trio in Switzerland, and it's absolutely contemporary music. Like, there's no jazz in it. So it is. I'm learning notes right now, and it's not easy. It's new music notes. Everything is written. Everything is atonal up to a point. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going on the road with my band Mixtape with Ulysses, Owen Mike King, and Chris Tordini to play all of my repertoire, which is nice. Really? You get to, when you're older, you get to revisit all your old hits and the hits that weren't hits. You know, like you can
How
look
does
at
this make you feel? Like when you check out your tunes from the 90s, or...
It's fantastic. It's so much fun because in my head, you know, these pieces are, everybody's heard them. In reality, 27 people have heard them. Nobody knows. I mean, I'm a nobody. Like, who would have heard these things? You know, 15 people that know me. Like, come on. These can get a second go around, and even better, you know. And then there's pieces that have not really seen the light of day, and I want to present. So it's fun to play music that is so familiar to me, where I don't have to do this, be on my toes all the time, which is, I would say, 70% of the time I'm doing stuff that's brand new, hot off the press. Count your, you know, head off and still sing your heart out. But
yeah,
this is nice because I can just like be wild with it.
Otherwise, do you still feel like going completely free improvising stuff, like we mentioned with John before?
No. I mean, there is free improvisation. I think a free improvisation for me means anything is free to go to any place at any moment. So if I were to sing a Kurt Weill piece with my Mixtape band, it could go into something completely crazy because everybody there is ready to fire. And they know that I could, you know, go there. But it doesn't have to. Yeah. I think when free improvisation becomes formulaic, as in, oh, we all have to be loud and aggressive and shrill, then it's not free. How is that free?
Yeah.
You told me what to do. The agenda is to be loud, shrill, and aggressive. That's not free. Free of what?
Yeah, sure. No, like
so
within context of composition, I really like that. Always.
Yeah.
That you can extend and.
Yeah, and those guys are ready for anything. I mean, again, Mike King, piano player, insane. Insane. Like, how do these? I don't know. Where do these people come from? Who made these superhumans? It's insane. Ulysses Owens and Chris Tordini.
Tordini is the same.
Can all do.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Can do anything all the time with ease and a smile on their face while being the nicest people you'll ever meet. Like, what?
Yeah, I love that. That's this what you guys have in New York. I think this. I remember I did a tour years ago with Lauren Stillman and John O'Gallagher, and I wrote this 12-page compositions. I was in that Monder phase, and everything got meters, blah blah blah. And we met in Zurich at 4 p.m. Had a gig in the evening. We rehearsed, and those guys just side-read everything. And I was just like, man, okay.
Get out of here.
I was like, damn. And then Lauren said, yeah, sorry, I messed up the bridge there. Like, really? Are you kidding me? You just... It's exactly what you said now,
Yeah, you just read Schoenberg. Yeah, I brought in this really hard piece by Kurt Weill. Really hard, actually. And the next day, Mike is playing it from memory and improvising over it in a stride piano style. I'm like, what? It's insane. It's really insane what kids are doing now.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yes, I call them kids.
But cool, Theo. I won't take more of your time. So thanks for sharing some of these stuff.
Yes, been so fun to talk to you. Yeah.
And I hope to catch you in Europe. Let me know when you're around.
Yes. And maybe we'll get to play music someday.
Yeah, would be fantastic. That would be incredible. But yeah, I hope to catch you live soon one day here. So.
Yes.
Cool.
Be well.
You too. Thank you.
Samo.
Bye-bye.